Hi, and thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to be talking about adaptive yoga and social justice. There have been many conversations about inclusivity and diversity in the yoga community. Yoga is not made for white women, and although white women practice yoga, yoga is for everyone. Yoga is accessible, and we as yoga teachers need to understand that it is part of our job to make it so. We've long left the dogma of some of our foreteachers. BKS Iyengar, Patabi Joyce, and Desikachar all had their lens, and their lens is what brought us to this place. We are grateful to our teachers, but we're not married to the teachers. We're married to the practice of yoga. The practice of yoga is the real teacher. These incarnations that we call our teachers are simply guides to the experiential practice of union, mind, body, and soul. That's really what yoga is. And when we find ourselves expecting yoga to be one thing, we actually are assuming that only a certain type of person can do it. But when we open up to the possibilities of what yoga can be, we open the door for inclusivity and diversity. There are going to be many conversations around inclusivity and diversity as we move forward as a society. It's time that we start to eradicate the narrative that yoga is only for certain people. And we have to do that through action. We can't just do that through our words. How do we take action? How do we stand firm for social justice without attachment and without aversion? Well, it's not quite as difficult as you might think. When we are at the seat of the teacher, we hold space for it all. We hold space for everyone in the room. And although many of us have psychic tendencies, very few of us are clairvoyant. And clairvoyancy doesn't mean that we're mind readers. So we don't always know what people are coming into class with. We don't always know what they're thinking or what their past experience is. So rather than assuming we know, we should not assume. We should hold a clean container, a container where we are accessible. So what does that mean? It means that we should create a space that is welcoming, a space where practitioners can walk into the door and see all different types of practitioners, from the pictures and the decor on the wall to the people coming in and out of class. If we're really trying to create a diverse and inclusive atmosphere, then we are putting that forward. Now you might say, but that's not sexy. No one wants to see people doing yoga that don't look like yogis. And I would say that's a misunderstanding. What does a yogi look like anyway? If you really look back at the rishis, the yogis that brought us to the place that we are, you'll notice that many of them are not thin. They're not athletic. They didn't do yoga asana at all. In fact, they sat and meditated for a long period of time. They practiced non-attachment and non-aversion. They sat with their material and let go of their ego. If I think yoga needs to look a certain way, I'm living in my ego. And I can recognize that without judgment, and I can start to reframe my perspective. Remember, Patanjali tells us that there are 5 types of mental fluctuation: truth, perception, verbalization, memory, and sleep. Truth is the only thing that's real. And the only thing that's true is that we are divine beings in a human experience. Everything else is our perception of reality and the story we place around it. Yoga is not about pushing yourself to the limit. It's not about riding your edge. It's not about overuse and it's not about injury. Yoga is about accessibility. It's about creating a welcoming environment where everyone feels seen and heard and connected to. Yoga is about letting go of the I, me, and my, and coming into the we, they, and them. Yoga is about interdependence. It's about the coupling of consciousness. It's about the lens through which we live and the awareness in which everything is arising, coming together as one. We are divine beings in a human experience, and in order to be a yogi, you cannot divorce yourself from social justice, diversity, and inclusion. At the same time, you can't project your agenda to try to incite the change that you want to see. Rather, it's about holding a clean container, providing options, meeting your students where they're at, being open and receptive for learning and growth, sharing yoga from the ancient text, not from your experience or dogma. It's about being compassionate, recognizing that it's never about the other, but always about our own insecurities and how we deal with them and release our limiting beliefs and our stories. When we do this work, we can really come clean. We can provide options. We can adapt the practice. We can meet people where they're at. We can embrace others' differences. We can hear other people's stories without having to be heard. And that's the job of a teacher. It's never about you. It's always about your students. So if you are integrating diversity and inclusion into your practice as a yoga teacher, if you're standing up for social justice as a yoga teacher, make sure that you are working on your material and coming to a place of compassion and loving kindness before you enter the room and hold space for a group of practitioners. If you do that, you can present a loving and compassionate, inclusive message that's not polarized and that helps people to see that their perspective is based on their lived experience, but it's not universal truth. When we can understand that our perspective is based on our lived experience and that our perspective is not universal truth, and we can understand that we are divine beings living in a human experience, then we can really change the world. But if we are so married to our perspective that we cannot see someone else's lived experience and their perspective and honor and respect it, then we still have a lot of work to do. Social justice, diversity, and inclusion, these are parts of adaptive yoga, and they're important parts. Recognizing our privilege is an important part of the practice. And our privilege doesn't just mean the color of our skin or the power that we hold in society. Truth be told, anybody who's living in a Western culture in a democratic government is privileged, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of their lived experience. We have social constructs. We have a system that is there to protect us. And although sometimes it's flawed and sometimes it is skewed to a particular demographic or a particular socioeconomic class, at least we have a system. And we can work to repair that system. We can tear down systems that don't work, and we can rebuild and repair systems so that they work for everyone. But remember, there are places in the world that don't have systems at all. And those are the places where people have no privilege, no voice, and no support. If we can start recognizing that our privilege is our perspective, and that our perspective is not universal truth, and then we can start working to tear down the systems of oppression that have prevented people from feeling comfortable in these environments, then we can start inciting real change. Currently, there are thousands of people being held hostage in China because they are Muslim, and we don't even know about it. People aren't talking about it. Those people are being forced into underground concentration camps, and they are suffering. And we are talking about things that really do need to be changed, but also come from a place of privilege. We need to do our work, eradicate the systems that are oppressing people in our country. We need to change the systems. We need to see each and every person as equal, able, and included. And then, once we've laid the foundation for our community and society to uplift others, we need to go in and fight for the rights of those without a voice. And if we're sitting here trying to get people to see it our way, and we're not recognizing that everyone's perspective is based on their lived experience, then we're not doing our work, and we have a lot more work to do. Social justice, diversity and inclusion, these are activating topics, and many people feel that their perspective is universal truth. But I promise you it's not. We all have work to do, and we all have an opportunity to change these systems, to create change. If we stop fighting, if we start doing our work, and then we come together in a way that is supporting interdependent change, this will uplift the collective consciousness and ultimately have a ripple effect that impacts the human race far beyond the privileged Western culture that we currently live in.